Hello friends, my name is Brian Moshiri and welcome to my channel. Karibu sana if this is your first time being here, and welcome back if you've been here before and you've elected to come back. Welcome to the final episode of Coming to America. What a ride it has been. I think this is the maybe 5th or 6th episode. I'm not keeping count, but yeah, for 6 weeks we have told this story, and now it's coming to an end. I was hoping that my dad would be joining me today on the final episode, but unfortunately he's not available. He's busy working on something and he'll not be able to appear on the channel today. But you have me, and I'm going to make sure that we finish this story. We give this story a fitting finish because it has been many weeks worth of it getting here. So the last episode we finished when I got to Minneapolis, when I was traveling to Minneapolis, and that is where I want to pick it up because I spent the last month of my time in the US in Minnesota, the land of 10,000 lakes, because there are so many lakes in Minnesota. So if you watched the previous episode, you remember that my power wheelchair, my personal power wheelchair had just gotten damaged. So I didn't have a wheelchair to use from DC to St. Paul's. I'm going to explain because though I was going to Minnesota State, but Minnesota has the twin cities, which is Minneapolis and St. Paul's. Minneapolis and St. Paul's, they call them twins, but they couldn't be any more different because Minneapolis is this very metropolitan city with high-rising buildings, and St. Paul's is a more toned-down version. They are more, maybe I don't know if this is going to be the accurate word to use, but it feels a bit older, a bit more calm, a bit more silent. But they are called twin cities nonetheless. So I was flying from DC to St. Paul's Airport. The supervisor who I was going to meet when I got to Minneapolis was a man called Willie Tully, or Willie Tully. Willie Tully. My Africanness and my Kikuyu, the Kikuyu in me just wants to say Tully rather than Tully. So his name was Willie Tully. And when I got there, I was just texting him and I was letting him know if there was a way he could organize for me to get a wheelchair just for me to get from the airport to the hotel, because we'd be living in a hotel called Residence Inn. So what happens is that the fellowship books a hotel for you because they want you to get the whole experience of working in the US. So they book you a hotel, but that hotel is like a hotel. The hotel room has like a kitchen with utensils. So though it's a hotel and all that stuff, but you can cook for yourself, so you don't have to buy meals from the hotel because that can get very expensive. We had 2 rooms, one room for my dad, one room for me, and a shared living room. So it was a very nice setup. So I text Willie and I ask him, is there a way you can find a wheelchair for me just to use? And Willie is such an amazing guy, and he came along with another person who later on became a good friend of mine. Her name was Meg Kruger. So they brought me a wheelchair to use, and I was so relieved because throughout the flight, I was so stressed because I didn't know how I was going to maneuver around not having a wheelchair. Just imagine, as a severely disabled person who doesn't have a wheelchair, what are you even going to do? And how are you going to get around? But all my worries were settled because I was eventually able to do it. And once I got to the Residence Inn hotel, the fellowship had booked me another scooter, so I was able to transition very easily to that. At this point, now I had started to develop a blood infection. So at this point, my body is in no way able to control its temperature. So when it's cold, I am freezing. When it's hot, I am freezing. So I didn't used to feel the hot temperatures. I was always cold. And that became a problem because I was always in my jacket and in my hoodie. So all the time, I used to wear like 4 layers of clothing. So I had a vest on, a t-shirt on, a hoodie on, and a jacket over. And that still wasn't enough. we were living in downtown Minneapolis, and things are different from there because downtown here in Kenya or here in Africa means like the other part of town, but downtown in the US means like the CBD. So downtown Minneapolis was like the CBD, and we were in the middle of very high rising. Actually, Willie told me that the tallest building in Minneapolis was just a stone throw away from our hotel, and the sun didn't used to get to us. Though it might be even 1 p.m., but the sun does not get to you because the buildings around are so high and so tall that they obstruct the sunlight from getting to you. So even though I was fully dressed and heavily dressed, and it was summer, and the temperatures were getting to upwards of 90 degrees, I was still cold most of the time, and that became a real problem for me. So I was going to spend my time at a company called Wilderness Inquiry, which is a non-for-profit organization that makes the outdoors accessible for all people. Not only disabled people, but people who come from vulnerable communities and people who are not able to access the outdoors themselves. So Wilderness Inquiry bridges that gap, and they're able to, in America, not a lot of people don't get that access to go and see nature, to go and kayak, because that is another thing with Wilderness Inquiry. They specialize mostly with kayaking and canoeing, because again, it is the land of 10,000 lakes, so there is a lot of bodies of water to explore, and if you're not aware or if you're not able to access them, you might not. So that is why Wilderness Inquiry is so instrumental in just introducing the outdoors to as many people as possible. I would go to Wilderness Inquiry every morning, like any other person would report to work, and they gave me like the best desk in the room. Because the working area was just one big room. The only thing that I regret from my time in Wilderness Inquiry was that I didn't have like a specified role in the company, in the organization. So all I could do when I went to work was just sit and have meetings with people. And again, because my health was not at its best and I wasn't sleeping well, I wasn't my concentration levels could have been better when I was going through all those meetings, but they were very kind to me. I remember my desk mate was someone called Jody, and she always had like this big, beautiful smile. She was always welcoming, and everyone else in the office, they always treated me well. And I was telling the people at Wilderness Inquiry that I got injured before I could start working. So that was my first experience like in an office setup. So I had never been in a working area setup before, so that was my first introduction, and it was very different from the kind of setup we have here in Kenya, because though I've not worked myself, I have friends and I have visited places like those. It's in the US, people are much more focused on doing their work, because you'd see people arriving at 7 and they would leave at later than 5, and they would never leave their working area, their working space. So they were constantly on their laptops, on their computers, just working and taking calls. Here in Kenya, it's much more relaxed for the most part, from what I have seen, from my experience. People just chilling, being on their phones, texting. That was very interesting to me, and you just have to respect the working culture in the US, because they are very big on that. So when I was there, I got to go canoeing on the Mississippi River, which was not too far from the Wilderness Inquiry offices in St. Paul's. So what would happen was that we used to live in Minneapolis downtown, and then every morning I would take like a 30 minutes drive to St. Paul's, the other twin city, and we used to travel by in the beginning, I was traveling by taxi, and then the fellowship was able to organize an accessible van service for me and my dad to travel with. So they were very kind and they were very accommodating in that regard. Transport for me was very easy and very convenient because they made it so, and I'm very appreciative for that. So I think it was maybe on the first or second week we went canoeing, and we went with some kids from I think it was from a certain high school. Maybe here in Kenya it would probably be primary school, because they looked like they were ages between 14 and 16 thereabouts, or maybe 12 and 15 thereabouts. So we went canoeing with them. I'll show you some videos, and it was my first time being, not only being in water like that, but also being in a canoe. And a canoe is much more stable than a kayak. Canoes are very convenient means of transport. If you have like strong people paddling, the canoe can go really fast, can move really fast, and it's smooth. It cuts through the water very seamlessly, and that was a new sensation for me, because we were really making good speeds, and we canoed for around 45 minutes, and yeah, it was a good feeling. During my time there, I was with a fellow Kenyan. His name was Rogers, and we were living in the same hotel. But in total, we were like 9 or 10 fellows who were doing their PDE in Minneapolis, and they were in different areas. One was Rogers was in a bank. Other people were in hospitals. This person was in another place, and so different areas. I was the only one who was in Wilderness Inquiry, and actually, Rogers used to go to work in the Reserve Bank of America in Minneapolis. And towards the end of our stay there, we were invited by his supervisor to go and have lunch there. So that is where all the money in Minnesota comes in and goes through. So we had this big case of money where they told us this is what 1 point something million dollars looks like, and they showed us so much money, and it was so mesmerizing, because you want to see it in movies, and now we were seeing it there live, and you could take a picture with it. They even had this seat that was made out of money, and it was like 4 million worth. It is money that has now is meant to be shredded. I think I don't remember the explanation, but after some time, the money is taken back to the bank, and then they destroy. Then the serial numbers are scrapped off, so you can't use that money anymore. Minnesota is not only known for its 10,000 lakes, but it is also the home to the biggest mall in America, the Mall of America. I didn't get to go there, but some of the fellows went, and they were able to buy fun stuff, and they were able to go around and take pictures. But my weekends were very busy, because when we were there, the Minnesota State Fair was happening, and the Minnesota State Fair is like the agricultural shows that we have here in Kenya, and it's a really big thing for people around Minnesota and even around the neighboring states, because it's one of the biggest state fairs in the US. And what do I remember about the fair? My dad was in a lot of pain, because I think he had an injury on his foot, and there was a lot of walking. I went with Willie and Meg again, so we were going round. I remember having this apple, because the University of Minnesota is a big agricultural university, and they produce a lot of new variants of fruits, and they had designed this apple called the First Kiss. The apples that we have here in Kenya are very dry. That one apple called the First Kiss, there was another more popular one that I don't remember its name, that everyone was telling me to try, but I couldn't get it. But that one apple, I just took a big bite of it, and the juices were just flowing down my chin. And it was so good that I had to have two. We saw goats, we saw chicken, we saw a competition where very strong men and women who looked like cowboys were using their chainsaws to cut through logs, big logs of wood, and they were shaping it into some kind of art piece. That was really fun. And something else that I was excited of was I visited a stand for the Disability Council on Minnesota Council on Disability, and I was able to meet some really nice people there and just interact with people who have disabilities, and just share notes and see how different it is from there and here. Because the differences, of course, as you can imagine, the differences are heaven and earth, And what else did I see? I saw this van that is like, you see, like the way there are mobile toilets here when you have events. They're mobile toilets, so you can go do your business and then you leave. But now there's a van that is meant for people like me who have disabilities, wheelchair users. So it's like a big mini lorry that you transfer into, you go and do your business there, but you have to pay, of course. But it was a good innovation. It was someone from, I think, from LA who was designing that kind of who was designing the concept, and they were just testing it out. So there was so much to see. But now the highlight of my time in Minnesota was a trip that we had to the Apostle Islands. The Apostle Islands, I think they are located in Wisconsin. I don't know, I'm not sure. But it was almost a 5-hour drive from St. Paul's to Apostle Islands. The Apostle Islands, we were staying at a place called Little Sand Bay, and Little Sand Bay is just next to Lake Superior, which is the biggest in terms of volume, is the biggest freshwater lake in the world. I had not heard of Lake Superior before, but it is this big body of water that is next to a very beautiful town. I don't remember what the town was, but it's a very beautiful town, very small town with very nice architecture. We were, I think, about 12 to 15 people who were staying at that camp. My dad and I were sharing a tent, and we used to make our own meals, clean our own utensils, and go on excursions every day. So we were there for 3 nights and 4 days. 4 days, 3 nights. So we got there on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then we left on Sunday. So the whole point was for us to go and try out kayaking, which is something that I'd never even knew existed. I had seen it, but the variation of Kenya is very different from the kayaking they do there in the US. So we kayaked for 3 days there, and it was absolutely amazing. The only thing that I just wished my health was at its best, because I could have enjoyed it so much more, because I was struggling a lot to enjoy. I was always cold. I was always shivering. I couldn't even participate a lot, because the moment I step outside anywhere and a small breeze hits my body, I start shivering immediately. And that is my only regret. My dad was very apprehensive about getting into a kayak. We used a 3-person kayak. It was my dad at the front, me at the center, and a very nice lady called Heather at the back. She was controlling. And my dad was apprehensive about getting into a kayak. And I just told him outright. I told him, you might not be prepared, but I'm going to get into the kayak with or without you. I was just ready to explore and to adventure in that way. So after some convincing, he decided to get into it and just enjoy. And he ended up liking it and enjoying it. We kayaked for around 50 minutes. We went to see some ships that had sunk like very many years, and because the water is so clear, again, you can see the shipwreck when it's down on the lake bed. You can see it even when you are over the surface of the water. So that was very amazing. And now the cherry on the top was on the last day. We went to see the sea caves of the Apostle Islands. it was breathtaking. I tell you guys, it was breathtaking. There were worries that we are not going to be able to go and see the sea caves because of the weather. When you're going kayaking, monitoring the weather is very important. So if there are winds, then you can't really go because the waves are going to be too strong. And with the caves, you have to be very careful because if maybe you are going through a cave and the waters are not calm and they are swinging, they are pushing you side and side, you might end up getting serious injuries from hitting the walls of the caves. So at the very last minute, we got the go ahead that we are going to be sailing through the sea caves. And we had a group of very awesome people. 2 couples first. There was Samantha, there was Ethan, there was Sammy, and there was Asha. Both of them both couples have since gotten married because we followed each other on Instagram afterwards. So I'm very happy for them. There was also Heather, Hannah, there was Aaron, there was Kelsey, a lot of amazing people. That was the ultimate experience for me and for my dad. And my dad was in charge of taking the videos and the photos, everything that I'm going to show you here. He took them, and he has an eye for a good picture. So I'm very appreciative that he was able to capture those moments. And the water was so calm, and the water was so clear. It was looking at the horizon and seeing how big Lake Superior is, and that the lake was allowing us to have this moment. You just felt very small and you felt very appreciative of nature, and you just want to protect it so that many more people can have that experience. And for me, it was an out-of-body experience because I knew that I would never have gotten that chance to be doing those things anywhere else. So it really meant a lot to me. And I remember just tearing up when I was in the kayak because I had to take it all in, because I knew that this is not something that I'm going to get back home in Kenya. So let me just soak it all in and take in and just appreciate it as much as I can. We drove back on a Sunday afternoon, and the Americans are very keen. Most Americans, or at least the Americans that I met in Minnesota, are very keen on having outdoor experiences. So on the road, you could see like people in their caravans, people just pulling dirt bikes, people pulling canoes and kayaks, just going out to have some fun. You could see families, mostly white. You could see mostly white families just going out. I had gotten very close to Willie, and I had gone to his place. He had taken me around to the state capital, the St. Paul's Cathedral, which is one of, I think, the 4th oldest and biggest cathedral in the world. It's massive. When it came time to say goodbye to them and to America, it became very bittersweet because I didn't want to leave, because America is very kind. It's very kind, especially to someone like me who has a disability. You rarely feel the effects or the magnitude of the things that you cannot do because of your disability, because the environment is so friendly. But because of my health challenges, I was ready to go home and just get some rest. So when we left, it was very hard for me to say goodbye, but up to now, I still miss them. I still hold all those people and the memories that we shared very close to my heart. And Willie's fiancée, Siri, as well, such a lovely lady who also works in Wilderness Inquiry. So it was time to come back home, and the flight from St. Paul's to Paris was easily one of the easiest 8 hours that I had to spend, because I was given 2 free seats, so I wasn't sitting with anyone. If maybe the flight is going to be not full, maybe you can be given a free seat, and that is going to go a very long way in your comfortability. But the flight from Paris to Nairobi on Air France. That was hell for me, and I couldn't wait to get back to land. And then we landed, and there was big environment summit that was going on in Nairobi. So the airport was full of people. I remember my mom and my brother coming to meet us at the airport. We landed at around 10 or 12, 10 to 11 p.m. and there was a small accident where my brother fainted at the airport. And then we had to take him to hospital so that he could be patched up. He fainted and bit his tongue. So the same time we took him so that he could be checked out and see what kind of injury he had. And we still had to drive back to Nakuru. So I ended up getting home in my bed at 3 p.m. Yeah. So just count. Let us do the maths. You spent 23 hours just traveling, and then you spend an extra 9 hours getting from the airport to your home. So just do the mathematics and see just how insanely tired I was. And for the next 3 weeks, I was recovering. But if you ask me, I would do it all over again, minus the health problems. If you ever, guys, let me just tell you, if you ever get a chance to go to the US or to leave our home country, and to just go and see what is out there, never hesitate. Even if it's going to be just 1 week or 2 weeks, take the chance and run with it. Like the Gikuyu always say, the person who has never left home thinks that only their mother knows how to cook best. So go out and see what lies beyond our country.